Good afternoon. My name is Paulette Granberry Russell, and I'm the Senior Advisor to MSU's President for Diversity, and I am so delighted to see all of you joining us this afternoon as participants in this stellar speaker series at Michigan State University, which I'm going to speak about in just a second. But can you just join me in quickly welcoming Congressman John Lewis. I tell you, when I was given this opportunity, because Dean Strample, who is the Dean of the MSU College of Osteopathic Medicine, who typically gives greetings and welcome and then introduce a guest of honor, as well as the individual who introduces our guest of honor, couldn't be here today. I thought, oh, how unfortunate, but how fortunate for me. And so I'm going to start by telling you just a little bit of the history here. This is the 15th annual Dr. William G. Anderson Lecture Series, Slavery to Freedom and American Odyssey, 15 years. By Dr. Bill Anderson, this gentleman over here. And I want to give thanks to him and Sandy Kilburn and all of the other individuals within the College of Osteopathic Medicine, including at that time the dean that embraced this speaker series, Dr. L. Jacobs, who has deceased, but he is here, I know, in spirit. And I want to also send thanks to our many MSU college and unit sponsors and our corporate sponsors from the College of Osteopathic Medicine's statewide campus system. All our sponsors are listed in your program, and I would ask that you please take a moment, read who they are, and also if you have an opportunity and you see them in the audience, thank them. Because of their sponsorship and their support of this program, we give this gift to our community. Today's presentation is being video recorded, and it will be placed in the MSU Library, MSU Multicultural Center, and the Capital Area Library. In addition, Slavery to Freedom lectures will be available for viewing on the college's website, which is also printed on your program. Many of you who are members of our Greater Lansing regional community may recall that in 2014, Michigan State University chose to recognize two milestone moments in the history of this country: the 60th anniversary of the Brown v. Board of Education Supreme Court decision desegregating public education, and the 50th anniversary of the signing of the 1964 Civil Rights Act. We called it Project 6050. I want to thank all of you in the community for making what is now the first year of 6050, because we decided, yeah, it was intended to be a year-long conversation, but you've told us that conversation should not stop. And so 6050 will continue. And we want to thank all of you for your choosing to engage with us, all of us as members of this community, to talk about the continuing issues with respect to civil and human rights, not only locally, nationally, but globally. Now, what I'd like to do is introduce someone who is a great friend of Michigan State University, Dr. William G. Anderson. I mentioned earlier that Dr. Anderson conceived this idea and brought it to its 15-year celebration. And you know, unlike some of you, I did not know Dr. Anderson's history when I was first approached by him and Sandy to talk about this idea of the Slavery to Freedom series. I knew of his experience and his role at Michigan State University in the College of Osteopathic Medicine. I knew quite a bit about his distinguished role in advocating in the support of diversity within osteopathic medicine, but I didn't know at that time that I was in the presence of what I've called, and what all of you will recognize as, one of the living icons of the civil rights movement. How many saw Selma? You saw a reference in Selma to the Albany movement, did you not? 9 months in Selma and the idea that perhaps that was not a success in the context of the civil rights movement. And others who said, you know, I'm not sure we could say that it was not a success. Okay? Who was the leader of the Albany movement? Dr. Bill. Okay. So. You already know that we have renamed this series to honor Dr. Anderson. He has been nothing short of essential to the award-winning Slavery to Freedom programs. His was the founding vision, and with staff in the college, he implemented it. For 15 years, he has faithfully recruited and facilitated the visits of these nationally renowned and inspiring speakers. I know we've got some followers in the House who have been with us from the beginning. We want to thank all of you for your continued support of this series. It is only fitting that his name be forever connected to this legacy. Therefore, we established this as the Dr. William G. Anderson Lecture Series, Slavery to Freedom. He has been the driving force behind these programs, and we are not only indebted to him for his sacrifices during the movement in the 60s, but also indebted to him for his efforts, his passion and dedication to make slavery to freedom what it is today. Clinical professor at MSU College of Osteopathic Medicine for more than 3 decades, Dr. Anderson currently is a professor of surgical specialties and senior advisor to the dean. Dr. Anderson will introduce Congressman John Lewis.
I got a chance to kiss one of my favorite people, Paulette Granberry. Thank you, Paulette. I'm honored, I can tell you that. I want to make sure that we had a representative crowd here, so my family came up. My son, my daughter-in-law, one of my granddaughters, and I think one of my daughters is over here. Would you stand? My family, my biologic family. Thank you. Oh, thank you. I also want to thank you, Paulette, and Pat, and Sandy, and Barbara. I want to thank all of you, and Beth, and Kim. All of you helped me to make this possible. I could not do it by myself, but you know that. I'm not that smart. But I do surround myself with smart people, and I tell my people, if you're not smarter than me, I don't need you. John, you got people? I don't need it if you're not smarter than me. And these are the people that make me look good. Let me thank you for one other thing. And Dean Strampet is not here now. I think he was somewhat instrumental in changing the name to the William G. Anderson. At least they don't say memorial. I'm still alive and still well and still with you. And I will continue to do this just as long as I possibly can. Now, let me say just a little bit about our honored guest, because I have known him since he was a little boy. Now, he was born in Alabama, 1940, 41, somewhere like that. I was already half grown by that time. I was born in 1927, you know, it was a long time before him. But anyway, but we knew that one day our paths will cross. We didn't know where, we didn't know how, but we knew one day our paths will cross, because we all had the same burning desire to do something to make this a better place for the succeeding generation. Is that right, John?
Yes, yes.
We at different times in our lives embraced the philosophies of Martin Luther King Jr. Social change nonviolently. That was unheard of. Who the hell have ever heard of changing this country nonviolently? This country was built on violence. You know, the only thing that some people understand is violence. That's all they understand. Well, John, in his own way, in Alabama, has had an impact not just on Alabama, the South, this nation, that impact on the world. John, you know, I thought I set a record when I went to jail about a dozen times, but no. John went to jail at least 40 times. But John was abused physically, emotionally, challenged his stability. They challenged his dedication and commitment to what he was doing, but nothing would stop him from what he was determined to do to make a difference. They call him, they refer often to his beloved community, and he's still working on that, by the way, beloved community. And he and I both hope that we will live long enough to see that beloved community. But we have something else in common. My daughter, I don't know whether he showed up here yet or not, Lyrita, is a graduate of Fisk University. That's where. If she's here, stand up, Lyrita, let him see you. You might have been classmates there. She's somewhere here. But anyway, John Lewis and my daughter both are graduates of Fisk University, one of the most prestigious of the African-American universities in the United States. But John also, he comes from Troy, Alabama, and I went to school in Montgomery, Alabama, and Ralph David Abernathy was a classmate of mine at university now. It was Alabama State College for Negroes. And Martin Luther King Jr. came to Montgomery to pastor a church where I was a member, the Dexter Avenue Baptist Church in Montgomery. So we had a lot in common. He sought out Martin Luther King Jr. when he came there. He was just a kid then, 17 years old. And I sought out Martin Luther King Jr. later on because I knew that Martin Luther King had the same objectives, goals in mind that we had. But then John, in 1961, those who recognized his contributions, not only to us as people who want to strive for freedom and justice and equality, but he captured the attention of many others as he ran for first a seat in Atlanta. Were you on the city council in Atlanta? And later on, representative, and later on, when he was elected to the United States Congress in 1961 and has been there ever since. That is somewhat of a record. There are not many who have survived election and re-election that many years. I would like to take credit for having started the Albany movement. I didn't. The Albany movement was started by students that were members of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. John was chairman of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. We had these things in common even before we knew each other. It only says something about people who are of common cause eventually will get together in unison, and we will together can continue to make the changes that we feel are necessary. Now, John has written and co-authored and contributed to many publications. I hope that you will go to your libraries and read them. One other thing before I take my seat, I don't want to take any time away from him, but some of you will say, damn, he's smart. He was able to convince, what's that lady's name who produced that movie, huh? You know, somebody will say that he got to Oprah Winfrey and said, Oprah, I know you have produced that movie, Selma, but you can show it only at about the time when Anderson is arranging for one of the featured persons in the... What? They don't believe that? But I had to say there was something prophetic here, that movie would come out just a month or two before John Lewis was to come to campus at Michigan State University. Because there are still those, especially the students, that don't know that it was real. You thought that John Lewis was a figment of somebody's imagination. No. I want you to come up and touch him and feel him rub his bald head. So that, yes, feel the scars on his body, the scars that he suffered for my freedom and your freedom and for justice and for equality. So I'm so happy that when I called him and said, John, I need help, because there are people at Michigan State University, students, faculty, friends, administrators, that don't believe that you were real. I tell them you were real, and yes, you did all the things that they said you did, and even more. So I'm honored, I'm privileged to have my friend, my colleague, and my colleague in the battle for freedom and justice, Congressman John Lewis. Thank you, John Lewis.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. Anderson, for those kind words of introduction. Thank you for inviting me to be here at Michigan State University. Pat, thank you so much for hosting us. You know, you look good. You're a beautiful, handsome audience. I'm happy to be here seeing all of these wonderful, smart, gifted young people. Our future is with the young. Many, many years ago, when I had all of my hair and a few pounds lighter, was deeply inspired by a young man named Martin Luther King Jr. I was inspired by Dr. Anderson. You're more than lucky, but you're very blessed to have this man in your presence. Working, yes, a doctor, but also an activist who spoke up, spoke out, and find a way to get in the way, to get in trouble, good trouble, necessary trouble. So Dr. Anderson, thank you for your vision, for your leadership. Thank you for all of the things that you continue to do, not just to make Michigan and this region of America better, but to make our entire country and our world a better place. You heard Dr. Anderson tell you that I grew up outside of a little place called Troy. Most of you never heard of Troy, Alabama. My father was a sharecropper, a tenant farmer. But in 1944, when I was 4 years old, and I do remember when I was 4, my father had saved $300, and with the $300, he bought 110 acres of land. My family still owns this land today. My great-grandfather, my mother's grandfather, had been a slave. Was a wonderful man, beautiful human being. When he was free, he got married to the person he loved. And the next thing he did, he registered to vote. So maybe, Doctor, it may be in my bloodline. From slavery to freedom. The system of slavery was vicious, it was evil. To bring fellow human beings from another continent, across an ocean, to be sold, to be auctioned off like cows and hogs, or mules or wagons. But in spite of slavery, we're still here. And we have been trying to redeem the soul of America ever since. To make our country a better place, to make our country live up to its creed. Growing up in rural Alabama on that farm, we had to pick cotton, gather peanuts, pull corn, work in the hot sun. And I remember as a little child, I would be working in the field, and I would fall behind. And my mother would say, "Boy, you need to catch up. You're falling behind." And I would say, "Ma, this is hard work, and it's about to kill me." She would say, "Boy, hard work never killed anybody." I said, "Yes, it's about to kill me." So I want to say to the students, to the young people here, I made up my mind then that I didn't want to continue to work in the fields of Alabama. I would get up early in the morning, get my books, place my books in a book bag, and hide under the porch until the school bus come along. And then when I would hear the bus, I would race out and run out and get on that bus and go to school. Overcrowded, poorly staffed, but I had Dr. Anderson, a wonderful teacher from Montgomery, who would say, "Read, my child, read." And I tried to read everything. I want to thank each and every one of you for being here today, because we must see that all of our children, all of our young people receive the best possible education. Growing up there, I attended segregated, overcrowded, poorly staffed schools. Rode broken down buses. But I never gave up, never gave in, never became bitter or hostile. I kept the faith. I kept dreaming for a better day. And we all must continue to dream for a much better day, a better country, and a better world. As a little child, some of my first cousins, brothers and sisters, we would go to the movie, to the theater on a Saturday. And all of us little black children had to go upstairs to the balcony, and all of the little white children went downstairs to the first floor. And I would come home and ask my mother, my father, my grandparents, my great-grandparents, why. They would say, "That's the way it is. Don't get in the way. Don't get in trouble." But I heard of Rosa Parks. I heard the words of Martin Luther King Jr. on the old radio, and I was inspired to get in trouble, good trouble, and necessary trouble. I saw the signs as a little child saying white waiting, white men, colored men, white women, colored women, white boys, white girls, colored girls. I didn't like it. I want to do something about it. In 1955, 15 years old in the 10th grade, I heard about what happened to Emmett Till. I was working out in a cotton field. And I thought what happened to poor 15 years old Emmett Till could happen to my first cousins coming from Detroit or coming from Buffalo. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know what to do. I wanted to say something. I wanted to do something. But a few months later, I heard of Rosa Parks, and the action of Rosa Parks and the words and leadership of Dr. King inspired me to find a way to get in the way. So I come here to say, each of us, and it doesn't matter whether we are black or white, Latino, Asian American, or Native American, we must find a way to get in the way, a way to get in good trouble, necessary trouble, to make our country a better place. When I finished high school in May of 1957, at the age of 17, I wrote a letter to Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. because I wanted to attend a little college 10 miles from my home called Troy State College, now known as Troy University. Submitted my application, my high school transcript. I never heard a word from the college. So I wrote a letter to Dr. King, told him I needed his help. I didn't tell my mother, my father, any of my sisters or brothers. I didn't tell any of my teachers. Dr. King wrote me back and sent me a round-trip Greyhound bus ticket, invited me to come to Montgomery to meet with him. In the meantime, I had been accepted at a college in Nashville, Tennessee. And after being in Nashville for about 3 weeks, told one of my teachers that I've been in contact with Martin Luther King Jr. This teacher knew Dr. King. He was a minister, been part of the same organization, the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, Dr. King organization. He informed Martin Luther King Jr. that I was in school in Nashville. Dr. King got back in touch and suggested when I was home for spring break to come and see him. On a Saturday morning in March of 1958, by this time I'm 18 years old, I boarded a Greyhound bus to travel the 50 miles from Troy to Montgomery. And a young lawyer by the name of Fred Gray, and those of you who have seen the movie Selma, he's played on the film. He met me at the Greyhound bus station and drove me downtown to the First Baptist Church, passed by the Reverend Ralph Abernathy, a colleague of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Ushered me into the office, the pastor's study of the church. I was so scared. I didn't know what to say or what to do. And Dr. King said, "Are you the boy from Troy? Are you John Lewis?" And I said, "Dr. King, I am John Robert Lewis." I gave my whole name, and he started calling me the boy from Troy. But being in the presence of this man, I grew up. I was inspired. You know, look, I was a country boy. Dr. Anderson would tell you that when I was a little boy growing up, I wanted to be a minister. On the farm, it was my responsibility to care for the chickens. And I fell in love with raising chickens. Now, you know anything about raising chickens? No, you don't. Don't fool me. You know, you don't know what I'm talking about. But growing up there, I wanted to be a minister. I became very good at raising chickens. Some of you know about Popeyes, right? Or Bojangles, right? Churches, some others. But you really don't know anything about raising chicken, but you love to eat chicken. Well, when the setting hen was set, we would take the fresh eggs, mark them with a pencil, place them under the setting hen, and wait for 3 long weeks for the little chicks to hatch. Some of you smart young students are probably saying, "Now, John Lewis, Congressman Lewis, why do you mark those fresh eggs with a pencil before you place them under the setting hen?" Well, from time to time, another hen would get on that same nest, and there would be some more eggs. And you had to be able to tell the fresh eggs from the eggs that were already under the setting hen. Do you follow me? You don't follow me. It's okay. So when these little chicks would hatch, I would fool these setting hen. I would cheat on these setting hen. I would take these little chicks and give them to another hen. Or put them in a box with a lantern, raise them on their own, get some more fresh eggs, mark them with a pencil, place them under their sitting hen, encourage the sitting hen, and still in the nest for another 3 weeks. And when I look back on it, it was not the right thing to do. It was not the moral thing to do. It was not the most loving thing to do. It was not the most non-violent thing to do. It was not the most democratic thing to do. But I was never quite able to save $18.98 to order the most inexpensive incubator from the Cicero bookstore. Now, maybe here at Michigan State University, or maybe in other places where you've grown up, you've probably never heard of the Cicero book catalog. That big book, that heavy book, that thick book. Some people call it the ordinary book. Some people call it the wish book. I wish I had this, I wish I had that, and just kept on wishing. Well, I kept on wishing. But as a little child, I wanted to be a minister, and we would gather all of our chickens together in the chicken yard, like you're gathered here, and I would preach. My brothers and sisters and cousins would make up the audience, the congregation, and I would start speaking or preaching. And when I look back on it, some of these chickens would bow their heads. Some of these chickens would shake their heads. They never quite said amen. But I'm convinced that some of those chickens that I preached to in the 40s and the 50s tended to listen to me much better than some of my colleagues listened to me today in the Congress. As a matter of fact, some of these chickens was just a little more productive. At least they produced eggs. But that's enough of that story. Don't tell my colleagues I said that. But meeting Rosa Parks in 1957, meeting Martin Luther King Jr. in 1958, and so many other wonderful leaders like Dr. Anderson set me on a path. Set me on a road to continue to stand up and speak out. Just think a few short years ago, it was impossible for black people and white people to be seated together at a lunch counter in Montgomery or in Albany or in Atlanta or in New Orleans. To be seated together on a bus, on a train traveling through the South. In 1961, the same year that President Barack Obama was born, we started the Freedom Ride. 13 of us, 7 whites and 6 African Americans, were selected to go on the Freedom Ride. We met in Washington, D.C. on May 1st, 1961. And the night of May 3rd, after we were going through orientation and training, we went to a Chinese restaurant. Now, growing up in rural Alabama, going to school in Nashville, I never had Chinese food before. Never been to a Chinese restaurant. But before we concluded this meal, it was a wonderful meal. Someone said, "You should eat well, because this may be like the Last Supper." Many of us signed statements, we signed wills, saying if something happened, I failed to return, these are the things that you should do. These are the people you should inform. We were beaten. We were arrested. We were jailed. We filled the city jail in Mississippi. Bus was burned with Freedom Riders only in Anniston, Alabama. Almost 400 of us went to the city jail, the county jail, and the state penitentiary in Parchment, Mississippi. But the Freedom Ride led to the desegregation of public transportation all across the American South. So those signs that I saw saying white men, white women, colored women, white waiting, colored waiting, those signs are gone. And our children and their children will not see those signs in places of public accommodation or public transportation. The only places our children and their children will see those signs, will be in a book, in a museum, or on a video. And don't tell me we have not changed. Just think, a few short years ago, all across the American South, people could not register to vote simply because of the color of their skin. People were asked to count the number of bubbles in a bar of soap, the number of jelly beans in a jar. As some of you saw in the movie Selma, when Oprah was asked to name the 67 judges, county judges, in the 67 counties of the state of Alabama. I know there are some people saying nothing has changed. I feel like saying, come and walk in my shoes, and I will show you change. If someone had told me that one day, while I was picking cotton in a cotton field, sitting in downtown Nashville, I've been beaten and left bloody at the Greyhound bus station in Montgomery and unconscious, that one day I'll be serving in the Congress, elected 15 times. If someone had told me that one day that I would see the hands that pick cotton in the deep South will help pick a man of color president of the United States of America. Someone said to me the night when President Barack Obama was elected, they said, John, why are you crying so much? Are you going to stop crying? I was standing in Dr. King and his father church, Ebenezer Church, speaking, and I looked to my left, CNN was on, big screen, and I saw Pennsylvania had gone for the president, Ohio had gone, Michigan had gone. I jumped so high, I didn't think my feet were going to touch the ground, and I cried, and the reporter said, you're crying? Why are you crying so much? I said, the tears of joy. He said, what are you going to do when he's inaugurated? I said, if I have any tears left, I'm going to cry some more. And that's what I did. I thought about Emmett Till. I thought about Rosa Parks. Thought about the 3 civil rights workers that were murdered in Mississippi, the 4 little girls that were killed in the church in Birmingham. I thought about the people on the Freedom Ride. That people came from this state, from this university. March, sat in, went to jail. So don't tell me nothing has changed. We're not there yet, but we're on our way to creating the beloved community. And I said to each and every one of you, you must never, ever give up. Never, ever give in or out. You must keep the faith and keep your eyes on the prize. People ask me from time to time, are you bitter? No. We were taught the way of love, the way of peace. Dr. King said on one occasion, you know, Doctor, you probably heard him say it so many times, that we must learn to live together as brothers and sisters, or we will perish as fools. It's that simple. When I was growing up outside of Troy, Alabama, 50 miles from Montgomery on that farm, I had an aunt by the name of Seneva. And my Aunt Seneva lived in what we call a shotgun house. How many of you ever seen a shotgun house? Oh, you don't know what I'm talking about? You never seen a shotgun house? But my Aunt Seneva lived in a shotgun house. She didn't have a green manicured lawn. Doctor, you saw some in Albany? Yeah. In Montgomery? In other places? My Aunt Seneva didn't have a green manicured lawn. Had a simple, plain dirt yard. Sometime at night, you can look up through the holes in the ceiling, through the holes in the tin roof, and count the stars. When it would rain, she would get a pail, a bucket, or a tub, and catch the rainwater. From time to time, she would walk out into the woods and cut branches from a dogwood tree and tie these branches together and make a broom. She called that broom the brush broom. And she would sweep this dirt yard very clean, sometime 2 and 3 times a week, but especially on a Friday or Saturday, because she wanted the dirt yard to look good during the weekend. For those of you who may not know what a shotgun house is, in a nonviolent sense, it's an old house, one way in, one way out, where you can bounce a basketball through the front door. I know you love basketball here. And it will go straight out the door. One way in, one way out. My Aunt Seneva, one day, had us all sitting in her house, and an unbelievable storm came up. The wind started blowing, the thunder started rolling, the lightning started flashing, and the rain started beating on the tin roof of this old shotgun house. My aunt became terrified. I was only about 4 years old, but I remember. She started crying, and all of us little children started crying because we thought the house was going to blow away. And when one corner of this old house appeared to be lifting from its foundation, my aunt had us to walk to that corner to try to hold the house down with our little bodies. When the other corner appeared to be lifting, she had us to walk to that side. We were little children walking with the wind, but we never, ever left the house. I said to you, the wind may blow, the thunder may roll, the lightning may flash, and the rain may beat on our old house. Call it the house of Michigan State University. Call it the house of Fisk University in Nashville, Tennessee. Call it the house of Michigan. Call it the house of Alabama, the house of Georgia, the house of California, the house of New York. Call it the world house. We all live in the same house. We are one family, we are one people. We must learn to live together as brothers and sisters, or we will perish as fools. So I said to you, as members, not just this community, but as members of the world community, do what you can. Encourage our children, encourage our young people to go and see the movie Selma. All of us, students and teachers, lawyers and doctors, professors, people will learn something. They'll be educated. They will be inspired. That when you see something that is not right, not fair, not just, you have to speak up. You have to say something. You have to do something. You cannot be still. It doesn't make sense in our country to have millions and millions of people living in the shadow. We got to push for comprehensive immigration reform. That's the last time I got arrested fighting for comprehensive immigration reform. No human being should be left out in the cold or left behind. We must respect the dignity and the worth of every human being. So in each generation, we all must play a role. We all must do our part to create the beloved community where we see each other as citizens of the world. You can do it. We can do it. As a young man said in Selma, we can do this. But there's a will, there's a way. Thank you very much.